Okay, welcome everybody to this meeting of the Scrutiny Management Board. Item 1 of the agenda is the election of a new chair for the board. Could I have a nomination for Chair of Scrutiny Management Board running until the next annual meeting of the Council in May 2024? Councillor North.
I'd like to move that Councillor Graham Norman is the chair.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder?
I'd like to second it.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? No? Thank you. So if I could have a show of hands. Those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. And I welcome you, Councillor Lawman, to the chair of the Scrutiny Management Board.
Thank you very much. I think we ought to note the work that the previous chairman did until her elevation. Playing silly buggers. Okay, we have next the election of vice chairman. I'll propose Councillor Irwin, if I may. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Lawman. Any other nominations? Any other willing volunteers? Those in favour? Okay, thank you. So you have a vice chair. Apologies for absence. I think we're all present and correct, aren't we, Mr. Smith? Yes. So we're no apologies. We have the minutes of the meeting on 27th of November. It's a long time ago. Are we all happy that they are a true and correct record of the meeting? Yes, a few nods. Yes, those that were here. Okay. Any matters of substance that people want to raise from them? Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you. I've got a couple. So on page 6, when we were discussing the green burials, one of the things that we wanted to happen was that we write to the councillor that raised the issue just to say what was happening. That didn't happen after the meeting. So he raised the issue as part of a scrutiny meeting after that. We as a committee, we agreed that. So could a letter go out when somebody nominates something, just to tell them whether or not that's being taken forward or what's happening in that case?
I think that's fair and reasonable. It's not noted in the minutes, but if we can do that.
Yeah, I take that on board. I'd informed the officers and then neglected to inform Councillor Hakewell, so apologies for that. Councillor
North was next. Or are you just agreeing? Yeah.
Sorry. Just on that note, Chair, I did raise that with our chief exec in a previous role when we were going through the review to create these, because there was nothing within when we were looking at it to put that in place. And I suggested that at the time, and I think it was agreed that that would happen. So, because if you put something forward from another committee, it is useful to know whether it has been put in place or turned down. And you can't check for every single paper, so just an email confirmation would be useful, I think.
Yeah, Councillor Lawman.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the green burials, the inquiring councillor had been advised twice in October when he first raised it at the Corporate Scrutiny Committee, what the process is and how the EAP are responsible for that particular area. I had discussed it with the previous chair, and the inquiring councillor had also been advised at the last, I think it was the last scrutiny committee, of the process again, which you may or may not like. It certainly was in, but I fully agree. If somebody puts something forward, they need to have some sort of acknowledgement that whatever has been put forward, that it actually is being looked at. Whether it receives the right support is a different matter, but out of courtesy, we need to have some sort of system in place.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on Councillor Buckingham?
Thank you. And then on page 7, the training, one of the things that we found through learning from the corporate scrutiny, budget scrutiny sessions, was that some in-house training could be provided on some of the areas that we were sort of looking at to I think advance our knowledge of that area. So if we can sort of make sure that we also think about in-house training on scrutiny from those departments, it would be good. Thank you.
So that would be something like briefings from directors and assistant directors on various policies and plans and so on, and activities, yeah. Okay. Councillor North.
Yes, and apologies, Chair, obviously new to this committee, so just a point of clarification. The recent meeting in relation to the Rothwell scenario, was that, I thought that was the Scrutiny Management Board, but I take it wasn't then, or those minutes aren't here?
So, I'm agreement. I'm coming to. I noticed that that meeting was subsequent to this, wasn't it? So, yeah. Is that a meeting that doesn't get minuted and presented, or is it a meeting that we will wait for?
Yes, it will come to the April meeting.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else? So, I think we've all nodded that we're in agreement with that. So, any requests to address the meeting? I can't see a throng of people. No. Any declarations of interest on any item? Okay. So, item 7, scrutiny work plan. If you want to take us through it, Mr. Smith, well.
Chair, before you start, could we just officially welcome Mr. Khan to the Scrutiny Committee, please?
Yes, Chair. So Kumar Khan is by my side this evening. Kumar will be starting with us on the 19th of March as our interim scrutiny manager. And I've been talking to him about you all early this evening, and he's still here. So yeah, once he starts, he'll get right into talking with you as chairs and vice chairs and help steer scrutiny forward. And you won't be seeing the back of me. I'll still be coming to the Scrutiny Management Board meetings. I'll still be the statutory scrutiny officer. So yes, I'm still very much working with you as well.
Yeah, there was a notification came out to us, but I think once he starts, perhaps a notification to all councillors or all scrutiny councillors at least, and the EAP is not going to be lumbered with them as well, presumably. No. Okay, so if you want to take us through the work plan and where we are with it.
Okay, so you are all familiar with the work plan itself and the structure. So we regularly review the work plan and the items that are going to each committee. So if I draw your attention to the beginning of the work plan at page 45, so this is the scrutiny work plan for the remainder of this year. and it covers the Scrutiny Management Board and each of the 3 scrutiny committees. So we'll go through those line by line for the board and each of the committees, and happy to receive any additional items, or if you feel, say, one meeting's got too much on the agenda and you'd like to move things around. And then after we've been through all of those items, we can go to the current version of the Executive Forward Plan, March to June 2024. And if there's any particular items on the Executive's Forward Plan that you would like to see at scrutiny, for pre-scrutiny, then now's the time to request that as well. There'll be 1 or 2 items which are already on our scrutiny agendas, but as the Executive Forward Plan is a living document, there will be 1 or 2 new items since the last time we had a look at it. So if I move to page 47 of your agenda pack, so we've got the Scrutiny Management Board meeting for the 4th of April. So this is our last substantive meeting of the year. So myself, with assistance from Kunwa, will be drafting you up a scrutiny annual report, and we'll share that with you, obviously, before the meeting in draft form, because this is an annual report of you as members. So we obviously want yours is key input for that. And then also we've got the Scrutiny Executive Protocol, which has been sort of sat on the shelf for the last few weeks. So my plan in the first instance is I'd like to sit down with you outside of this meeting, Councillor Lawman, and take you through the draft that has been put together. And then the plan for that is to then talk to the leader of the council, because what we want is we want buy-in from both scrutiny and the executive. And then at that point, we'd internally share that with other members of the executive and scrutiny management board, and look to have that agreed formally at the 4th of April meeting.
That would be useful and obviously important. I think 2 of the things that occur to me, there's a number of reports that slip, and there's slippage in reports. Often reports aren't ready, and how we deal with those, and also the timing of these and the other scrutiny meetings as opposed to the exec, because often we're finding there's no time to get the report, get the scrutiny in before the report is due to go to exec and have any meaningful input. And this will be more for next year in the protocol, how we time things so that we make sure we get the best value out of the work that scrutiny can do on these things.
Yeah, certainly where there's items of pre-scrutiny that each of the 3 committees would like to undertake, then we recognise that we may have to maybe bring forward a meeting a week or delay it a week, and we have had during this year, we have had single item meetings added to the municipal timetable. There's a couple of sort of large executive items that we may have single issue meetings for in the coming weeks. So yes, that's no problem. And what we've also done, we had an issue with corporate scrutiny in terms of the timing of looking at the key performance indicators in terms of when the executive received it at the beginning of a period, and then scrutiny would be looking at it at the end of the period, very shortly before executive were looking at the next periods. So we've adjusted those meetings for next year so that you're looking at key performance indicators and key financial issues very, very soon after the executive looks at it themselves. So we've restructured the timetable on that basis.
Okay. Anybody else any comments about the obviously we haven't seen it yet, the protocol, but any input that to be taken into account?
Until we see the protocol, we can't really comment.
But there may be things you'd like to see in there that officers can take away and mull over.
I think the timely submission of especially the budget scrutiny papers, absolutely, because we totally struggled getting them in time, and sometimes we had not even 24 hours to actually go through them, and when we come to things like Children's Trust and so on, when we scrutinised them in the budget process, it was extremely difficult to really get your head around some of the areas. It's got to be without members having to chase for those papers on a continuous basis, and I think that applies along the board. The executive is brilliant because you've got a long forward plan there. You know exactly what is going to come in unless there's something sort of unexpected. But when you come to scrutinise, and sometimes it felt as though we were being just hindered all the way, and it really needs to improve.
Councillor Buckingham.
And I concur with the Vice Chair that, you know, it was very, very difficult, especially with the Children's Trust. And I think one of the things that was difficult for me was the community plan, community strategy, which came 3 days after we'd finished the budget scrutiny. So there was no oversight or, you know, and it just would have been nice to, although it says within the plan, you know, we're working towards the scrutiny, it had already been to several places before it came to budget scrutiny. So one of the learning lessons that we thought we would have was that we would have a plan for the Children's Trust, what was coming to scrutiny and when, so that we could start earlier on that process. Sometimes it's difficult, and as Councillor Lawman has said, you know, the medium-term financial plan, you were chasing all the time, and, you know, it just made it not insurmountable, but difficult.
The communities strategy did go to the Prosperous EAP and the placing strategy as well, so it was looked at quite a lot. Obviously, that isn't the budget.
And through you, Chair, part of what I've put in place in terms of the draft of the scrutiny executive protocol is, you know, governing the relationship of the executive advisory panels and scrutiny, and making it, you know, very clear the important place that scrutiny has within that relationship. So it's basically like a three-way thing. So it's between executive members and scrutiny members, but also it's key that officers are able, as you're saying, to be able to, you know, produce documents in a timely fashion, so that you're able to look at it properly.
Okay. So the next two are standard items, aren't they? So.
Yes, so moving on to page 49, we move on to the Corporate Scrutiny Committee. And so for the first meeting that's coming up on the 9th of April, we've got customer service operations in the out-of-hours service on the agenda, and we also have Children's Trust quarterly update. And then we've also got the annual review of performance management framework and key performance indicators. So they're the So we've got the 2 detailed scrutiny items. We've got pre-scrutiny, and then we've got the regular items, which is the performance indicators report and the forecast draft outturn, alongside capital monitoring. So it's quite a busy meeting on the 9th of April. I don't know if Councillor Buckingham, you'd like to, through you, Chair, if you'd like to comment on that meeting.
Sorry, on the 9th of April.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, there are some meaty items there. I don't have a problem with those 3. The regular one, performance indicators, draft outturn, and capital monitoring, they're all pretty standard anyway. One of the things that I have asked for from David Watts, not for that meeting, but a meeting coming up, is a briefing on the rise in adult social care. So adult social care placements are at the moment, and I attended an APSI conference on adult social care and what needs to be put in place. And there are some big conglomerates. Moving into the market because it's seen as a lucrative market in the placements of adult social care. So what I've asked him for is just a briefing on what he feels the importance will be for our finances, because those costs are rising rapidly, as we've known from budget scrutiny. So I've said that following this conference, if he could bring a short briefing note on the impact of the finances of the council. And if I'm wrong, please tell me I'm wrong, and I will change that. But I think it's an important one to look at.
Yeah, go on.
Thank you, Chair. Is that a briefing note that you would like to go to the committee outside of a committee meeting?
I think so.
Yes, okay. Yeah.
Councillor North.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the KPI topic or item. One of the things we mentioned some time ago at the corporate scrutiny meeting, and I just want to make sure this is not just a report in relation to an annual review. In relation to it was indicated in this current year that actually the KPIs for scrutiny are set by the executive. And one of the things I raised in relation to the KPIs, that actually if you're actually keeping and holding the executive to account, the executive shouldn't be setting their own KPIs for scrutiny. Scrutiny should have much more of a choice in relation to the KPIs they want to look at. Now, I did raise this when we looked at this previously, so I'm just making sure that this paper will cover that, Chair, because it was agreed, and as far as I'm aware, it was agreed, and it was a key item that actually we should have a lot more choice of scrutiny, corporate scrutiny, on actually what KPIs we have.
A point I was going to make was that over the last few months, the type and number of KPIs has been changed to reflect what, as you say, the executive felt was more important to report. I think when you look at this, you should be asking because a plethora of other KPIs are collected and not necessarily reported. You might like to ask about some of those, and which you feel that will be worth reporting or keeping an eye on, whether it's by scrutiny or by exec. I think that's something that should be part of it. Did you want to come in as well? No. Go on.
The other thing, Chair, is, and I think if it's okay, I mean, one thing Ben did say, and I think it's in the paper, that if we wanted to add anything else to the Scrutiny Management Board for discussion of a new item, this was the place to do it. And we obviously did go straight into corporate scrutiny, but I think it may come under that anyway. One thing I am concerned, Chair, is that in the last couple of weeks we've had a huge amount of government announcements in relation to funding. Obviously one this week with the H2O funding, millions and millions of pounds coming into the council. But at the moment we've got no process at all for actually monitoring that spend or where that money's going. We agreed the budget last week, that money's come in since then, and I'm not aware of any process where we can scrutinise, pre-scrutinise or scrutinise that money that's coming in from the government in relation to the H2O funding, the rough sleep for funding that's come in. We're having huge announcements, huge amounts of money coming in, but they're separate to the budget. And I'm just wondering if there's an area where that might be something for corporate scrutiny or scrutiny to look at.
As far as if it comes in as capital, it would have to go through executive anyway to actually approve to receive it and to spend it. So that would be the first thing. When it comes in as revenue, I'm not sure whether there's a varmint or whether it just gets added to the revenue spend. And usually, if there's a paper for capital, of course, it will show the allocation of where it's going in quite high level. I'm not sure about revenue. I don't know anybody.
I think one of the things that Sanjit and I both want to do, so you'll be aware that we issue the fortnightly members briefing now, and one of the things that we absolutely want to do is, you're talking here sort of about really like big ticket announcements, so in a more timely fashion, informing the backbenchers of the council of what's coming through, and then that gives you an opportunity to say if you want to scrutinise that because you've got the information to hand.
Yeah, that's another way of doing it. I mean, the announcement I saw was in the press rather than through the council. We didn't do it internally first, which I thought we should have done, and I saw it on the press. So yes, so at the moment, as I said, we've got lots of money moving in, but we haven't really got a great deal, from a scrutiny point of view, a great deal of control over analysing. Not saying there's anything wrong, it's just the process of looking at it if we wanted to.
Councillor Lorman.
Please don't worry, I've already put in 2 big bids. One of them is for Wilby, a crossing across, and the other one is called the Irish bypass. So by the time that is spent, I don't think there's anything left for anybody else.
We're going to go for a situation of having no money to having it paid 3 times if we're not careful. Is that it? All right. Okay. So that deals with with that, because the rest of it are regular items, aren't they? With the 9th of April, and then we've got June 2024.
So these are items that have previously been identified, either raised by the committee itself or raised here at Scrutiny Management Board. And this is really starting to look at next year's scrutiny work plan. So I think, are you happy with those that are there? And really at this meeting, and definitely April and in between, working with Conwar, is to start to identify those items that we want to populate for next year's work plan and start bringing that in. So I don't know if there's any items, Councillors Buckingham and Councillor Lorman, being the leaders of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee. I think Councillor Lorman wants to come in.
Through you, Chair. On page 54, the ICT Working Party, that is a very quick item that could have been put onto the April plan, because all we need to do is, when we discussed it in the budget sessions and so on, is to create or reopen the a working group, nominate people who want to be on there, and then form a task and finish group to let that happen. I don't think it's helping us moving it to June, because this group hasn't met for well over a year now, and there's very, very little information that was available. We need desperate information really on the transformation, and that all came out in the budget scrutiny sessions. So I would ask the chairman whether item 1, the ICT working party, whether that can be put into the April programme and then into corporate scrutiny onto the next committee to just form the working group. It's not the members, and when the chairman of the corporate scrutiny committee and I, when we discussed it, it's not the members, the previous members. We want to have new members on that group and reach out outside our corporate scrutiny committee as well to find people who may have the expertise in IT and so on, and make use of those councillors. But I think in pushing it back to June, before it starts with anything, we are losing more and more time. That's just what I think.
If that working party has already been mooted, are there not terms of reference and so on already in place? And if so, can you not just ask for names and proceed without waiting for June?
I shall discuss that outside of the meeting with Councillor Buckingham and Lawman. I think you may be right. I think we maybe just be able to reform it outside of a formal setting. I'll need to discuss with the Assistant Chief Executive. What I'll do is I'll get the 4 of us together and we can discuss, resetting and bringing that back online. Yeah.
But do please note that Councillor Hakewell has said that he does not want to be on that.
Can't think why we all find that amusing. Councillor North.
Thank you, Chair. The waste contracts are not recycling contracts. The general waste contracts are coming up, Chair. And Ben asked if there's any future things. Now June may be too soon, and I haven't put a request in for the current system. It's just came to me. We might as well could discuss an item at some point, looking at the current costs of the waste contracts or contract, because
I'm not sure whether that would be scrutiny corporate or would it be placed in.
But it might want to be somewhere before we run out of time.
Yes, I think you may have slightly jumped ahead in terms of the pages.
Gender, excellent.
Yeah, as the chair says, we can obviously discuss that as part of the place and environment scrutiny agendas that are coming through.
Okay, so I think that covers corporate scrutiny. We come to the end of it. So health scrutiny, which is coming up very soon.
Yes, 12th of March. I would, I'd just like to highlight the work that one of my scrutiny officers, Raj Sohal, does in terms of liaising with our health partners on health scrutiny. He's can be quite dogged at times in terms of making sure that the because they're obviously all extremely busy with everything that they do, and in terms of tying together diaries, etc. Raj is doing a great job on that. So I just wanted to highlight that. So 12th of March 24, we've got 3 items for detailed scrutiny. We've got the GP performance and availability, substance abuse. So this is in relation to rough sleeping. And then we've got the NHS Northamptonshire Integrated Care Board 5-year joint forward plan. So on that one in particular, we'll have representatives from the Integrated Care Board coming to you to talk about their proposals through to 2028. We shall ensure that the actual joint forward plan will circulate that to members of Health Scrutiny in advance of the agenda going out, so you've got more time to have a look at that.
Yep. Go on.
Right, yeah, so thank you for that, Ben, and thank you, Chair. So there have been some changes to that agenda for the 12th of March. We aren't going to be going ahead with the GP performance and availability for the simple reason that we need to give it the time and it needs to be effective scrutiny. And unfortunately, we were unable to get, or Jane was unable to get the CEO for the ICB, Toby Sanders, to attend at such a short notice. We were also big on getting GPs to come and give personal testimony for scrutiny as well, and Ali's going to be sorting that out and needs time to do that, and also, he's also the Director of Primary Care, and we also want to bring in Health Watch to be invited to give feedback from patients. So with all that work that needs to be in place, we've delayed it until, well, I've been asked if it can be delayed until this particular item until the 14th of May. So that is going to be moving to the 14th of May. But the other two items, the substance misuse and also the ICB plan, that's going to be going ahead as normal. One of the replacements, because it's going to be quite a short agenda, what's replacing the GP appointments, I've been talking to Jane about this, would be the health checks for the NHS health checks, and she's going to try and prepare papers and a presentation which sits within her team to get that done on time for the 12th of March. So we've got the substance misuse, the ICB plan and health checks instead of the GP. All right. I've also got further things to say, but I'll...
Okay. So, and you've also got pre-scrutiny. I noticed in the forward plan that homelessness report has been delayed till June in the forward plan. So is that going to be ready? As I said, normally when it's delayed, it's because it's not ready. Is that going to be ready for the scrutiny meeting? Anybody know?
The homelessness strategy. So that was referenced. Is it? I don't know if the paper's ready or not. To be fair, Chair.
It's in the.
I think it'll be good for it to come to the.
Well, yeah, but it's in the. It's now in the June. So as long as that's ready. Just to make you aware.
Yeah, I think it'll be good if it can be ready for the May meeting.
Yeah.
That would be ideal. If the homelessness strategy is 2023 to 2028.
You may need to liaise with whoever's writing that strategy. Any other comments? Councillor Irwin.
Yes, through you, Chair. Could I just clarify with Councillor Llewellyn about scrutinising health checks? You said. Can you just say a little bit more about that? Because I'm not quite sure what that would involve.
So this is a recommendation from Jane, which I think it's I haven't got the details. She suggested it as public health, and I think it's a good idea for it to slot in. The reason why I wanted it to slot in because we could have a shorter, we'll have a shorter meeting with GP appointments and availability off the agenda.
This is Jane Bethia, the Director of Public Health. This is Jane Bethia, the Director of Public Health that Councillor Wells talking about.
Yeah.
Anything else you said you wanted to say?
Yes, just about the future items. I think one of the items I want to see coming potentially in July, I think it was on the list as well, is school exclusions. That's something I want to see potentially in the summer, if that can come. That'll be good. I also want to potentially see later on the 0 to 19 services. I had a very good meeting with Jane Bethia, the Public Health Director, and we had a good chat about the important items to be bringing forward. Smoking cessation is one of the ones I want to see in the summer as a suggestion, but also the health and well-being strategy, be later on in the year or the summer if there's progress been made on it. Suicide prevention will be good if that comes up at some point, and sexual health services. And I think I mentioned the 0 to 19 services as well. Obviously this will be in collaboration with the papers being ready, but those are the key items that I want to see come into health. Thanks, Chair.
I think the only one of the things you haven't got is obesity.
Sorry?
The only one of the things you haven't got is obesity.
Oh, well, yes, I think that could be.
I know there's more of a focus on prevention now we've got the LAPs, and that would be good. Councillor, did you want to? No? Any other comments on health scrutiny? We've got, so do we need to agree all those subjects, or can we just say that, that they're acceptable subjects and they'll be diarised as and when we're able to get the relevant people?
Yes, I mean, as Councillor Lowell was just saying, so yes, so it's for you as a board to agree the additions and changes to the plan. We'll go through place and environment scrutiny before that. But yeah, so it's talking to our officers, such as our Director of Public Health, talking to our partners, and making sure that we don't sort of overload one particular meeting as well. But we will have chairs briefings with each of the chairs and vice chairs, and with the key corporate leadership team officers, and we'll be able to pull together a good work plan for next year when we come back in the summer.
Okay. Yes.
Just a quick one, and I know that the 0 to 19 services, the sexual health and things like that are coming for procurement, so I think it would be really good for them to have that pre-scrutiny, so that we get the outcomes that we're going to be looking for on them. So I agree.
Okay. Go on.
If I may, I just want to clarify, because I relayed a lot of different items to you. For the May meeting, what I would like to see coming there is one of the items that's already suggested, which is the NHFT quality report, the homelessness strategy, and also the GP availability. Right, thank you.
Okay. So on to place and environment. We've had some changes there. In particular, we've had some paper. This is particularly where we've had some papers not ready, and some changes of dates. So perhaps, yeah, if you could take us through as to where we are with these.
Yes, so so if we move on to, where are we now, 29. So if I go to page 64 for our next meeting on the 30th of April. So we've got here first two items in terms of detailed scrutiny, review of changes to the planning service, and that's a review after 1 year looking at the impact of changes to the planning service, and that's following the LGA peer review and the changes in the service provision. And then we are looking at reporting back on the developer contributions scrutiny panel, and I'm aware that that met this afternoon, so I don't know if you wanted to provide a little update on that.
Yes, we had a good session with officers this afternoon, and we've agreed that there will be a list of recommendations to bring back to place and environment, which will then come back here, and recommendations to executive. We'll do the circulation of the recommendation initially electronically, so that they're ready and presented to the next. We'll have a sweep-up meeting just to clarify and to agree them all, and it should be ready back for the 30th of April then. All good.
Yeah, that sounds excellent.
So if we go back, because we postponed the 27th of February meeting, there's a bit of a, which was initially itself postponed, wasn't it, from the 5th?
Yes, so one of the issues with that is the Kettering Leisure Village business case. So that isn't ready to be looked at the moment. And also the surplus asset disposal, unfortunately. And then we've got the workspace transformation project, and we're looking at probably having an additional meeting in March to cover that.
So yes, we agreed that there would be a separate meeting for the KLV. It's liable to be a big paper, and it's liable to attract a lot of interest.
Yeah, that was the one I was sort of alluding to earlier in the meeting.
We have been assured that the surplus asset disposal policy will come back to us before it goes to executive. So again, the timing is to be looked at when it's ready. The workspace, we've got a workspace transformation project. There's a working panel, isn't there, looking at the asset rationalisation. It's suddenly become transformation. Do we know where that has got to? Presumably that's a report from the panel to come back to for recommendations.
I will check with my officer who is working with members on that panel. She's on annual leave this week, so I will check and I will let you all know.
Yeah, because I'm aware that one of the officers who was leading the actual trips and everything is due to leave, so I'd like to make sure that that is ready before she takes all her knowledge with her.
Okay, thank you. In terms of the, so
here's the homeless. So in April, the homelessness strategy appears there. So.
Yes, that's right. And then it's pretty bare at the moment in terms of June and going into next year. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts, Chair, as to items you would like.
There was a considerable list of other things that I saw in another document, top of which was probably Keir, and second and third probably as well. So we may need to allocate perhaps a single meeting to them because they're doing other things for us now as well. So it may
yeah, I think the committee, I think Keir came and there was a lengthy presentation and debate, question and answer. I think they said that they would be coming back with or I think maybe you requested that they come back with a further update. So yeah, we'll definitely get that scheduled in. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely one probably may need to, but also of course as we previously mentioned, some of the waste contracts are up. The household waste recovery centres are due for to be re-tendered. So I know that's going to be put out rather than taken in-house. So that will be something to look at, and obviously particularly the future of two of them. One is leased, isn't it? One is declared too small for what's going on. So a long-term look at that may be needed. So anybody else? Councillor North.
Just going back to, and I certainly agree with you on both of those points, Chair, but going back on the changes to the planning service, the first one for 30th of April. As you know, the follow-up pass review was deferred from a couple of weeks ago. Have you any idea whether that meeting will take place, because obviously it's a further update report. I'm not aware of a new time or date for that follow-up meeting.
Sorry,
Whether
could you just repeat the title of that?
the Planning Advisory Service. It links to the changes to the. It was the LGA peer review. I don't think it was an LGA peer review. I think it was the Planning Advisory Service.
Yes.
So they're coming back, and that was deferred from 2 weeks ago.
Yes, so that's planned for 30th of April.
I mean, will that include, because we learnt today in the 106 meeting that the new ICT arrangements for planning are going to take at least 2 years to bed in and to bring in. We'll be doing the 4 ex-borough areas in 6-month chunks, so it will take some time, but I think people will be interested to know, how that's progressing, what that will do, and how it will work.
Yes, I think what you're getting at is it should be, and it is the Planning Advisory Service. Yes, so that's a bit of a typo there. Yeah, so I think it should. What you want is you want to look back and a look forward. Review of how the changes have bedded in, but also what future changes are in train and how that's going to affect applicants and members of the public and residents generally.
Yes, Gabriel.
Yeah, I just think there's a bit of confusion there when obviously Ben and I was discussing it just now. My understanding is there's a past review follow-up meeting that I'm involved in amongst others who were invited the first time, and that surely should be reporting before this this committee, unless you're going to do it separately. But as far as because they are coming out to do another update.
Are you talking about the, I'm not overly familiar with it, is it the Planning Transformation Board?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Perhaps we'll ask Mr Harbour for
Yes.
information of when it is and when he's expecting to report back.
Yeah, to link into this committee date. So just a bit of...
Okay, yeah, I'll take that away. I understand where you're coming from now.
Yes, all right.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Councillor Buckingham? Yeah.
Sorry, is this now moving on from health and to the other committees? Because we've got coming up on the 1st of April the regulator of social housing, and we have talked about that before, having a briefing on the changes that are coming in, the expectations of the regulator, and just a sort of briefing, because that could have implications for inspections going forward, although they have said that the first inspections would be the big housing associations. However, they've released their how they will regulate and the standards that are expected, and I just think we do need at some stage a briefing paper. It was what was discussed with Adele as monitoring officer at some stage.
So if we can ask the Housing Department for a Teams briefing, which probably sounds about on the new regulations and how their understanding of how they're going implemented, that would probably cover it, wouldn't it?
It would.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Then we've got there's a page next on scrutiny review panels. So asset rationalisation we've talked about. 106 we've talked about. ICT value for money, I think we've talked about that one. And the budget, well, that's now concluded for this year, but obviously we need to be thinking for next year and how we do it. It seems to me that not enough councillors were engaged. Well, they all had the opportunity, but not enough were engaged in it. And I wonder whether some of the elements should go to some discussion of the actual projects and proposals should go to the individual other scrutiny panels as well. And I also think that the opportunity for the public to contribute is still lacking and still not. We've not got that to the place it should be. Councillor Buckingham, and I've got Councillor Lawman.
I agree wholeheartedly. The problem was they were allowed to come in, but not discuss any of the things that they wanted to. So it's how we involve members in that, because there's an awful lot of skill, knowledge, information with the councillors that we already have, and they should feed into somewhere. And I think you're right. Just doing the consultation on the budget without thinking, you don't want to overcomplicate things, because there are hard decisions to make, and you don't want to give the wrong impression, but at the same time you do want there to be people feel that they are part of that process. So I would agree wholeheartedly.
Councillor Lawman.
Thank you, Chair. I sometimes felt when we were attending the budget scrutiny sessions as though we were totally and utterly outnumbered by officers. We had sometimes about 10, 12 officers and about 4 members actually making comments, and I think there were 1 or 2 where there were just no comments. And it's got to be open to all councillors. Not all councillors will ever turn up. But I would like to draw on your expertise, because when we discussed it, you said that in previous times at County Council, you had a public session as well. Could you perhaps just briefly explain how that worked?
Well, I was going to come on to that. I mean, the scrutiny sessions were open to all councillors to attend, and they were obviously chaired by one particular councillor. And we would normally get a table probably as big as this with every seat taken by councillors with a suitable number of officers. We did various things for the public. I mean, the one year we went out, I remember we were in Oxford Street and had presentation boards and things, and that was reasonably attended. But the thing that was valuable was that organisations, charities, community organisations, had the opportunity to come in and, if they were affected particularly, and state their case and say things. And obviously it was often the case that a lot of the councillors didn't know about that organisation, because often they were localised and didn't necessarily understand the effects that a decision was made, and they were able to make a judgment on that. So I think it wasn't so much individual people, but it was organisations and lobbying groups and interested parties that came in with a degree of expertise that was useful to the councillors to make decisions. So that was where the benefit was. Councillor North.
Well, thanks, Chair. I mean, I don't want to disagree and be on my own here, but in fairness, in my view, one, it was better than last year, and also I think from record there was 10 or 12 meetings in total. And I think obviously very early on, obviously the change was made that all members were invited to come along. I mean, they were invited to come along. And again, in fairness, Chair, they are not part of the committee. They can't just suddenly take part if they're not actually on the committee. So if you're doing a proper corporate committee meeting review, they can hardly be obviously involved in that sense, because obviously they're not on it. So I just want to say in fairness that there was ample opportunity for members to come along and listen to the meeting. Although I will agree with Councillor Lawman, there were times very few of us in that meeting from a member point of view.
Yeah. No, I think there was still one of the committees, but it was opened up and people were allowed to sit at the table, allowed to speak, ask questions, and so on. Okay, so.
Sorry,
and then
Chair.
we've got, sorry.
Can
can I just?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. I think it's a really important point because an awful lot of work went into actually establishing those meetings, setting them up in terms of the presentations that sought to feed into those. So anything that can be done in terms of improving engagement in those would be, I think, a really positive step forward. Within that, though, as Councillor North has quite rightly pointed out, there are parameters in terms of how that engagement can be had and how we can manage that. So I think perhaps what we could take away from this, and there's also actually, it's a really tight time scale for the finance team to finalise the figures. So how we can work within all of those parameters, but actually the information, the message given out to members or other persons that want to be engaged in it, and how they can do that. Perhaps we could improve in some way that part of the process. So how can they feed in if they're not members of the committee per se? What are their options, and be clearer about that going forward?
Maybe it could just be called working party, a budget working party, and then it gives you the opportunity to have a degree of flexibility. Okay, so then we've got in the scrutiny review panels, crime and disorder, knife crime. I don't know if that's actually running or...
So that was a suggested review panel, so that hasn't started up yet.
And then we've got the annual review of outside bodies. And I understand there's two, that the budget and the outside bodies are separate from the limit of 4, aren't they?
Yes, so the outside bodies and the budget panel, they are standing panels. So it's 4 running it, maximum of 4 running at any one time, plus those 2. So in terms of the outside bodies, I've myself and Raj Sahal have started the process of engaging with the outside bodies themselves. So letters have gone out to them to say, what their views are of engagement over the last year, and they've started to come back. We're also preparing a further set of questions to go out to existing outside body panel members to confidentially come back to us and say, what are their experience of the outside bodies, any changes that they would suggest in terms of representation, or whether we should continue attending those meetings. We'll also engage with senior officers and also members to inquire, are there any specific outside bodies that perhaps should be added to the list for next year? So we're starting that early engagement, and then the plan is for sort of March and April to bring back the outside body panel together and present the information that we've been able to gather.
Okay. So we'll wait for that. Yes.
Sorry, we kind of skipped over. I know you mentioned something about the crime and disorder, knife crime. There was no real. Is that coming forward anytime soon?
But it doesn't look like it's been started.
Is it been? It's not been started.
No, it's not been started. Whether is it something we wish to
I think it's a good idea.
progress?
Yeah.
Because we can only have 4, so we need to pick the most. Okay, a couple may end soon, but we need to make sure we get the best value out of the 4 we can have, which is not to stop individual councillors going off and speaking and looking at things themselves. Councillor Lawman.
One question though, if you only expect the information to come back to April, we've got on the 22nd, 23rd of May, we've got annual council when all the outside bodies are being allocated to members as well. Is that sufficient time then for that to be done by the leader and the deputy leader?
Yes, we're following the same time frame that we did for last year. So it's exactly the same time frame, and that worked fine. So part of the terms of reference for the outside body panel is that it reports directly to the leader and to council. So it doesn't need, one of the benefits in terms of the time span, it doesn't need to come back to one of the scrutiny committees beforehand.
Councillor Buckingham.
Yeah, last night we had a briefing on serious violent crime partnership. So how does it work in partnership with that group? Or is that specifically, and I don't know or understand how having a working group and a partnership group sort of could work together.
I must admit that's...
Yeah, I wasn't in attendance at that briefing, so
It was a very high-level strategic briefing, wasn't it? I mean,
it was talking about the partnership, the funding that's coming in, the priorities for knife crime and all the rest of it that Jane is part of. So the drugs, the whatever, and I just wondered, you know, is it worth doing things separately? But maybe it is. I don't know.
well, perhaps the answer in that case is to write to the Director of Public Health and say, is there value in Scrutiny doing some work, or is it too early because this is coming in, and seeing what she says, because that...
yeah, I mean, it sounds like the themes coming out of that briefing are probably ripe for looking at including those in terms of reference when we come to undertake the panel.
Okay, so perhaps we can do that, see what the work, because it has to be some value to the council for it. And then we've got 2 items suggested for referral. We've discussed one of them already, green burials, adoption of roads, which is... I'm not sure why, as it's a legal process, I'm not sure why it's going to an EAP rather than actually scrutiny, because scrutinising their job is not to look at, you know, what's going on. It's to project forward and recommend to executive. And there are a number of issues with the adoption of roads that we're aware of, and I would have thought they would sit more with scrutiny than they would with EAP. So I don't know.
Yeah, so the in terms of the executive advisory panels, it's looking at it more from a, sort of a pre-policy, sort of blue sky thinking, providing input to the executive member. Obviously when it's, you know, ready for scrutiny, when there's a policy, when we're at that stage, we can then bring it back to scrutiny.
But I'm thinking that the interest is in the roads that are not adopted, that have been around for a long time, and there are a lot of them. I remember my old division of Boughton, there was a road built in 1937 that had never been touched, and you know, because it was not adopted, and it had, you know, it was all houses, residential, and there are a few others around, and I think, you know, that those wouldn't be affected by a policy. They're you know, things that need addressing. So I don't know whether there's... So I'd be interested to know exactly what was planned in that one, and where suggestion came from, why it was passed. I don't know. Councillor North.
Well, the other thing, of course, Chair, is it's not just about the adoption of roads, obviously handing over from developers. There's the open space as well, and they're kind of intertwined, and they're sitting in no man's land. I know there's sites in Rushden like that. And I would have thought if we were looking at, the EAPs were looking at a policy, it wouldn't just cover the roads, it would look at all the areas that developers keep, and obviously discuss with the council whether the council decides to adopt them or not. As an overarching policy, as I said, encompasses open space, not just... Roads aren't separated out on those agreements, are they? It's all, you know, especially in urban developments, it's all area-based. So I'm just wondering whether, you know, it's much more than roads. So I'm agreeing with you that actually some of it from an EAP is more than
I'm aware of an open space that has mixed ownership, and we've been cutting it for 50 years. And one bit was owned supposedly by a company that went into liquidation 30 years ago, and there was actually Crown land, and so that's easy to sort out. Others of it were owned by previously BCW and NEC, and other bits were owned by the previous developers who'd sold it on to a speculative company. So it was a nightmare, and that was quite a thing to try and sort out, because suddenly we were cutting land that we didn't own, and there were implications, even though we've been doing it for 50 years through a previous council. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, perhaps to give you reassurance, perhaps if we were to request the director provide a briefing note at this stage, so the broad status of adopted and unadopted roads, and sort of policy plans for the future. Provide a briefing note to you so that you're aware of sort of the direction of travel.
It's fine. We can look at. Okay, that's the end of the script. But then we've got the forward plan. Obviously, it's March meeting. It's there are a couple of things I'm sure would have been interesting. It's too late to do anything about them now. As things like home to school transport, which is always interesting, and adult social care. When I see strategic, I always think that's something that probably has interest. We've got Kettering Leisure Village, I noted, and that's already on the list, and that's due for April. Whether it makes April or not, I don't know. And the asset acquisition policy in May, we've got on our list anyway, and the homelessness in June we've got on our list. So unless there's any others that people see that are worthy of pre-scrutiny, Councillor North.
Just wondered if the council-owned company governance arrangements.
I know what that is. That's the crematorium at,
is that?
which was a Teckle company for Wellingborough, because it was more than 5% of the of their turnover. So and now it isn't 5% of their turnover. So but there may be other companies as well.
Yeah, it's a little bit wider than that. So I've started a piece of work in terms of the portfolio of the council's companies, the Crem being one of them, absolutely. So it's about synergising the governance that underpins all of the companies that the council owns. Part of that is the member engagement into that, and the sort of split between members' roles on sort of the board of those meetings, and potentially considering setting up a committee for members to act as a sort of an oversight, and the board being made up in a different way. So it's a complete and utter sort of review of it. So there'll be a sort of process around what the options are on how we might manage that better, and then in terms of what the options are on how decision making can be considered, and that split between members and officers, and where the skill sets best lie, and where those decisions can and should be taken. At the moment, we haven't really bottomed that out, so that piece of work has started, and that will be brought back.
It doesn't actually need to be a company anymore, but it could be. Councillor North.
Yes, sir. So on that chair, and I can imagine what that's like with 4.5 councils with different legacy arrangements. Yes. So I don't know whether you, Chair, you think perhaps it's too early or it doesn't need a pre-scrutiny, but maybe at some point in the future.
It wasn't one I picked out, but if members want to make it, that's up to members.
So from a monitoring officer's perspective, for me, the more eyes that are on it, the better. The greater the member engagement can be with it, the better. So I would certainly welcome that. I would caveat it by saying that given the sheer scale of the piece of work that we're undertaking and the documents that underpin it, that timeline that's in this report may well slip a little bit, so I'll give myself that cushion now. But definitely, the more members that can have sight of this, the more engagement that we can have, the better the company governance arrangements will be, and it's really important that we get it right.
Do we have a large number of owned companies then?
There aren't as many as you might have thought. We've now got a list, so we've made some really good progress with it. But the idea behind the thought process for having a governance framework that underpins all of the companies is so that we have got one central member group that actually oversees and sort of makes and hears things like the business cases, what those companies are doing. Some of them will be commercial, some of them won't necessarily be. So it's just how we determine a space for members to have that oversight, and then how we utilise the technical expertise of officers. So, for example, officers from finance teams to then look at those business cases, look at the figures, look at the finances, and also those officers in the relevant, so if it's a communities area, they've got the relevant expertise to think about what the companies are doing as well. So it's a huge piece of work, but we've got a list. It's not that exhaustive. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but that is something, of course, that if this group wanted to look at it, we would welcome.
Councillor North.
Well, I sense, Chair, I think the words just started this, and it's a huge bit of work. I sense April is definitely not on the cards. So maybe, Chair, you know, as you said to the members, whether it's pre-scrutiny, pre-exec review of it, or later on, then maybe it could be added to the work programme. It certainly sounds big enough to me.
Okay, we're happy to put it on the list.
Yeah, I think realistically, we had the reason that the April date went in was because we wanted to meet the annual council report and have it as part of actually the outside bodies and record it in that way. I don't think that's realistic, so happy for that for the timetable to
so
accommodate some scrutiny.
Roll over the current members, or need to whatever current arrangements, right?
Yeah.
Yes, in terms of the outside bodies, there are some on the list that do involve our owned companies, and then there's a number of other sort of national and regional bodies to look at on there.
I suppose, yes, some maybe bodies. Yeah. Councillor
Chair, I wonder, I'm not quite sure how we can phrase it. We have got quite a number of members who are directors on a board without possibly the full knowledge of what they've let themselves in for. And I'm sort of looking at recent Wellingborough organisation that may not be that financially viable, and we have members who are trustees there. And could we have on a training programme some sort of training on what the trustees and directors' responsibilities are before members at the annual council sort of jump into it, because I think it's quite important, because some of them could find themselves in great financial difficulties.
Yeah, there is an issue with one particular organisation which hasn't got its governance structure at all satisfactory, and we have a representative on it who's been asked to remain on it, which against other recommendations, and certainly the town council has taken people off because it wasn't happy with the exposure that they have. But of course, the limited companies like the crematorium, there's a conflict of interest for those directors in a lot of cases, which is a bit unfortunate, because if it was an internal, direct body, they wouldn't have that. So you were going to.
Yeah, that absolutely something that I've picked up as part of this and started a conversation around training. The conflict of interest is a really interesting point. So one of the ideas that I'm considering and developing as the thought process goes on is around this sort of shareholder role. So the council is a shareholder in all of these committees, and actually then that does potentially bring in a conflict if the member is acting as the shareholder representative at the board. Then there's a direct conflict, because when you're a member of the board, you've got to put the interests of the company first, whereas if you're the shareholder representative, you're there to manage the interests of the company. So one of the things that I'm considering is having a shareholder committee so that the members have got that and they can influence and use the shareholder function properly. And actually the board membership could potentially be something that we consider would better sit with officers, so that financial technical expertise, their expertise in the actual subject area that the company is seeking to work within, can be utilised. So that's one of the things we're thinking about, and acutely aware of the fact that actually members are sitting on boards and haven't had any training, and potentially in a vulnerable position given the personal liability that arises from being a board member. So these are all of the things that are sort of whizzing around in my head that I have put to paper. It's something that we need to get an internal definite sort of position on and then start to test that with members.
I mean, there's a situation where if a company makes a surplus, the directors may say, oh, we want to invest that, whereas financially the council may say, we want that surplus to support our revenue budget. So there are conflicts that would need some direction, yes. Anybody? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Talking about conflicts, a couple of other items I'd like to see coming in, and I do declare an interest in these topics, just to make that very clear. The adult social care strategic framework, I think that'll be good to come to be considered, but also the annual inflationary uplifts contracted adult social care providers. And the reason I bring this forward is for I know from the industry that one, because of the minimum wage increases, that's going to put a lot of pressure on providers in terms of charge rates and things like that. And I think it'll be good to to potentially scrutinise that, what the council's doing from this in this county.
And that would presumably be health scrutiny.
Yeah, well, this is what I'm saying. There is a conflict monitoring officer, because my company is a health and social care. I do not oversee it. My brother does. I'm Bedford and Gloucestershire. I got heckled at by a Labour person before for bringing anything up to do with adult social care.
But it's we're not making a decision on it other than to look at it tonight, so it's personal. Okay, anything else anybody's got? We had a good thrash through all the various things, and I think we've come to some sensible decisions and way forward, which is great. So thank you all, and till the next time.